Welcome into Around the Hornacek Week 2. Tommy Hogan here alongside Oliver Miner as we will be having all of your Knicks news from this week as the Knicks go to 1-3 during the week and 2-4 on the season. The Knicks really didn't play well this week, Oliver, as I predicted they would go 3-1 against the Pistons, the Rockets, the Bulls, and the Jazz, and you predicted they go 2-2. They end up going 1-3 as they only beat the Bulls at Chicago. Really a disappointing week for the Knicks.
Yeah, they're like I said, their defense was not looking good last week. It has continued into this week. Up until this point, they're ranked, I think, last in defensive efficiency per 100 possessions. The offense is there; they're 13th overall in offense, but their defense is just not what it looks to be. And another thing is with the new system that Hornacek's brought in, the fast-paced system doesn't seem to be working either. You have guys like Derrick Rose who are usually with their traditional pick and roll system with him and Joakim Noah had in Chicago, and that's not seemed to be transitioning well.
You know, the Knicks are already making coaching adjustments. They already, with the defensive struggles that you mentioned, they've already have Kurt Rambis become their defensive coordinator pretty much. They needed a guy that would just focus on this team's defense because it's not up to expectations so far. You had you had Joakim Noah, the former defensive player of the year. You thought they'd get better defensively. You have Kristaps Porzingis, who led rookies last year in blocks. You thought the interior defense would be good, and so far they're just not playing well. You could blame it on the guards. You could blame it on Rose and Courtney Lee and Melo for not guarding the guys well, and the interior guys actually having to step up. But still, this team is just not very good defensively, as it showed against Detroit, as they lost to Detroit 102-89 this week. The Knicks really, in the first half, they stuck with Detroit. It was a 9-point game at half, as Melo had 24 points in this game. Porzingis had 18 points. They played decent, but they weren't scoring. They just could not put up the points, as they only scored 89. You had Derrick Rose only scoring 19 points. Derrick Rose said these guys they weren't shooting the ball well, and when they're not shooting well in a game, they have to pick up their defense, and they just did not do that in this game. Tobias Harris had 25. Marcus Morris had 22 for Detroit. It just wasn't a good game for the Knicks, as Joakim Noah only scored 2 points again. He was struggling before this and during this game, and he really had a bad week this week.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough game to watch. I mean,
Brandon Jennings, he returned to Detroit, though. He had 12 points. It was a good return for Brandon Jennings, but nobody off the bench is still scoring. Yeah. They only had 3 points from Endor. They had 2 points from Lance Thomas, who should be their seventh man. They would like to get 8 to 10 points out of Lance Thomas, and he really has been struggling.
Lance Thomas has been looking brutal this season. He's not what they needed him to be.
Played 26 minutes and only scored 2 points. You can't have that. Also, Billy Hernangomez, the guy who they signed in the offseason, he was the guy who they expected to maybe beat out Kyle O'Quinn at the backup spot. He wasn't able to do that in preseason, and he only got 5 minutes in this game. He didn't even score. He was a guy who they thought could really impact the team this season. He has not done it so far.
Yeah, and you'd think if Kyle Quinn, if he could outplay Hernangomez, then you think it'd be all right with him not playing. But Kyle Quinn, I mean, he hasn't had a good year either so far. He had 0 points that game.
He did have 4 blocks though.
He had the 4 blocks, but I mean, you're going to need more points off him, especially coming off the bench. They're not looking good bench wise.
Absolutely, and then Knicks go into their next game. They get back to MSG and they play James Harden, who's just having an unbelievable season. It was a rough game again as the Knicks lose this one.
Yeah, Harden, he dropped 30 on them. I mean, he went off. That's a good game for him. He had the 15 assists. They couldn't not stop Harden. No NBA team could stop Harden, it seems, this year. But I mean, you look at Porzingis in that game. He didn't even have a field goal. He had 3 points from the line. He didn't attempt a 3. He 3 for 4 free throws. Like, he was not good at all. And you see Joakim Noah, I don't know why, but he's still not getting the minutes that I think he deserves. He had 0 points that game. I mean, the bench looked bad. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of things clicking right now for the Knicks besides Carmelo.
It was a bad game. The Knicks lost 118-99 as they lose by 19 points to a depleted Houston Rockets team who lost Dwight Howard in the offseason. I mean, they're starting Clint Capella at center, who's really would be a backup center for most teams. They're starting Ryan Anderson, who's just He's a good 3-point shooter, but he's not a down low threat. He had 16 points in this game. Harden dropped 30 and 15, like you said.
Another thing I think to note is Montrezl Harrell, the second-year guy out of Louisville. He went off for 17, so that just shows that their bench, they don't have many defenders on their bench either that can come in and guard the second unit for other teams. So another thing to note right there.
The Kristaps Porzingis and Joakim Noah combined for 3 points in this game.
Yeah.
That can't be acceptable when you're playing a team who, yeah, they might be better than you because James Harden is having an unbelievable year. He's averaging close to 15 assists this season. Carmelo Anthony's only scoring 21 against a guy you know James Harden's going to score 30. You need Melo to match that 30, and he only gave you 21. Derrick Rose, he's starting to pick it up by this game. He scored 16 in this game in 30 minutes. That's a good game from Derrick Rose. Courtney Lee put up 16 as he went 2 for 4 from 3, but still not much production off the bench. They had Brandon Jennings with 12 points again. They had Kuzminskis, who looked good. He had 6 points in garbage time, though. And Justin Holiday is actually starting to play very well for the Knicks. He's starting to be a guy who off the bench could be that backup shooting guard who the Knicks need. He's very good defensively, and he actually had 8 points. He's shooting the ball well. He went 2 for 4 from 3 in this game. He's shooting the ball well from 3. He did only go 3 for 10 from the field, but he is shooting the ball well from 3 in this season.
I think the bright spots are definitely Holiday played good. Courtney Lee played good too, actually. He had 16 points. He came in, hit 2 threes, 7 for 12 field goals. I mean, he was efficient. So, I mean, he was one of the lone bright spots in that game for them.
The New York Knicks then head into Chicago as Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah go back to their old team. Derrick Rose back to his hometown as Chicago Bulls really had they had a good reunion for these guys. They had a video tribute for Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah. Derrick Rose even mentioned he tried to watch some of the tribute. Joakim Noah wasn't letting him do it. He wanted him to stay focused in the game. He really wanted this win back in Chicago, and the Knicks got it done. They won 117-104. As Kristaps Porzingis was the guy in this game. He had 27 points, 5 rebounds, shot 4 from 7 from 3. He looked very good as Carmelo Anthony did as well. He had 25 points in this game. He did shoot 9 from 22 from the field, which I guess that's a typical Melo day because he puts up a lot of shots, but
22 is not too many for him.
But Melo needs to shoot over 50%.
Yeah.
He needed to shoot over 50%, and he still put up 25 points, which was a good game.
And what's surprising to me is that the Knicks came into Chicago. You didn't expect the Knicks of these 4 games last week. You thought that Knicks were not going to win this one. I think that was the one that they weren't going to get out, and they ended up somehow winning that one. And that could be a preview for the season. It could be an up and down season, and a lot of games are going to be like this. Sometimes they're going to be hot some games. Porzingis is going to be hitting threes, Melo, Courtney Lee, and some games like the Pistons, they're going to be duds. So, I mean, it's going to be definitely an interesting season to come.
A lot of streaky shooters on this team, yeah. Derrick Rose, he's streaky from the outside, streaky from the field. Some games he wants to attack the bucket. Some games he just looks lackadaisical. But this was one of these games where he really attacked the bucket. He had 5 assists in the first quarter, finished with 11, which was his season high. He was averaging 3 assists going into this game, and he had 5 in the first quarter and finished with 11. Had 15 points, 11 assists. Joakim Noah really had a good game too, going back to Chicago, as he had 16 points and 9 rebounds. It was a good game from the starting lineup. Courtney Lee, he had 17 points in this game, but the bench combined for 17 points, as Brandon Jennings had played 23 minutes and only scored 6 points, going 2 for 4 from the field and 1 from 3 from 3. He needs to be putting up more shots. He's a guy where he could get hot, and you need a guy off the bench to get hot, and Brandon Jennings is the guy you'd look to, and he didn't do it in this game. They still got the win because their starting lineup played well, but man, this bench is going to be the talk of the season.
They definitely have to step it up, or else you're going to see them making some trades or roster changes later on in the season. I don't believe that this will be the roster you see at the end of the season. I think there's going to be some guys that get dealt.
They definitely need to make some additions to this bench because, I mean, Lance Thomas, he was out in this game, but he's a guy who really hasn't performed to their expectations so far. He was a guy they really look to be the second guy off the bench, and he has not been that guy so far. Kyle O'Quinn, he had 7 points in this game, going 3 for 7 from the field in 13 minutes. And Justin Holiday, he also had a decent game. He played 14 minutes. He only had 4 points, but he really played well defensively against. They have Doug McDermott on the team, who he matched up against and played well. But the Knicks, this was a good win for the Knicks. If they lost this game and went 0-4 during the week, it would have been a bad week for the Knicks. It would have been very, very rough.
Definitely. And you thought that they could carry this momentum when they went back home to New York, and they ended up losing to the Jazz by 5. I mean, first quarter they got off to a hot start. They were up 10. And then every quarter after that, the Jazz outscored them. I mean, there's bright spots in the game. You saw Melo with 28 and Porzingis with 28. So I mean, 2
back-to-back games where now Porzingis has over 27 points. It's big.
Yeah, it's looking promising from the offensive end for who we all thought was going to be the second scorer for the team, Porzingis. But I mean, you have Joakim Noah, once again, not too many minutes played. Still don't know why that's the case. I guess maybe trying to get Porzingis at the center, give him minutes there. But you've seen that you don't know if he can guard the big man. Yes, he's 7'2", but most NBA centers are going to probably weigh more than him, and they're going to body him down on the post. So he's going to have to get stronger. He's going to have to bulk up or something. He's not going to be playing the 5, which is what they want him to play, I think.
And this was a game where if Joakim Noah played a lot, they match up well against the Jazz. Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors match up well against Kristaps Porzingis and Joakim Noah.
Definitely.
But for some reason, Joakim Noah only played 20 minutes in this game. Like you said, only had 4 points. Wasn't much of a factor, but the story in this game was Gordon Hayward for the Jazz. He came back.
Yep.
He off an injury, didn't play at all this season. First game of the year, and puts up 28 on Carmelo Anthony. Goes 14 for 14 from free throws. He did only shoot 16 for 17 from the field, which I guess is a bright spot. I guess it shows that the Knicks played decent defense on him. But once he was driving to the basket, they were just fouling him, and he took advantage and went 14 for 14 from free throw.
Yeah, you'd expect some rust off a guy that hasn't played in a year. But I mean, he came out shooting the lights out, and Knicks is definitely going to have to improve on most aspects. Just coming off of this game, I don't know where the season's going to go from there.
They even had to take Carmelo Anthony off of Gordon Hayward at one point because he was just getting dominated by him. They had to put Courtney Lee onto him, and still that didn't really help much. But Carmelo Anthony was getting burned by Gordon Hayward in this game. Derrick Rose, he had a decent game. He had 18 points, shot 50%, went 7 for 14 from the field, had 8 assists in this game. But really, Joakim Noah, I think, is a story in this one. On the Knicks side, only playing 20 minutes. I don't know why Jeff Hornacek is not playing him to the 30 minutes, which I think Joakim Noah deserves and can play. He did come off an injury year last season, but he had all off season to rehab. He seemed fine, and for some reason, Jeff Hornacek is wanting to go to a smaller team. He played Lance Thomas 29 minutes. Well, Lance Thomas was coming off a sprained ankle and still got 29 minutes. So I don't know why he thought that he had the matchup of going smaller against a big team with Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors in their front court. But for some reason, Jeff Hornacek wanted to go to the smaller lineup.
Yeah. So Knicks obviously have a game tonight. They're playing against the Nets.
Playing Brooklyn back at home. Jeremy Lin coming back to New York.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this game on paper, and you want to say this is a win for the Knicks, but I mean, the way they've been playing, and the Nets are a bad team. The Nets were a bottom 3 team in the league last year. They're bad, but
they should be a bottom 3 team in the league this year. But they're 3-4 right now. They have a better record than the Knicks.
Yeah, they're better record than the Knicks. I mean, you have Brook Lopez, who's always a consistent scoring option on offense. Jeremy Lin come back to New York. I think he'll bring some, but you want the Knicks to come out with a win. I think you need this win to get back on track for them. I don't know how. They're not going to look good at all for the rest of the year if they're going to drop to the Nets.
And the Knicks really do match up well against this team. You have Joakim Noah on Brook Lopez. He should be able to guard him. They might put Porzingis on him since Brook Lopez is actually starting to step out and actually shoot some threes.
Yeah. And
Joakim Noah has a tough time getting out there, so maybe they do put Porzingis on him. You'll have Derrick Rose facing off against Jeremy Lin. That's a good matchup. Jeremy Lin is becoming a pretty good point guard in the league. He started out his career, obviously. He had Linsanity in New York, back in Madison Square Garden. But Knicks, this definitely should be a win on paper. If this isn't a win, it's brutal because the Knicks have coming up Friday, Saturday. They have a back-to-back against 2 good teams in Boston and Toronto, 2 teams who should probably be in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference this season.
Yeah, I think that this next week, like I said, there's the Nets tonight, and then you have the Celtics and Raptors. I think, obviously, I don't think they're favored at all. I think they're a massive underdog. So if they can come out with a win, the Nets, I think it's better than dropping to 0-3 on the week. I think
you can't go 0-3 in this week. You'd be 1-7 your last 2 weeks. That would not be very good at all for the
No.
Knicks. That would be. I hate to say it, but that might be panic time already.
Yeah,
You'd
it
be
is
2-8 in your first 10 games. That's not a good year. That's not a good start for the
Yeah.
Knicks, who came in with high expectations.
and like I said before, I think they're gonna. You'll see if they continue to lose games like this. I think that they're gonna definitely make a serious roster change. They're gonna start tanking. They're gonna start clearing space, or they're gonna make a trade. They're gonna trade someone off. I'm not really sure where this season's gonna go.
I don't think that would be crazy if the Knicks would be tanking after signing or you trade for Derrick Rose, sign Joakim Noah, sign Courtney Lee, sign Brandon Jennings, and 10 games in you start tanking.
I mean,
One season, even if they do it
Yeah.
mid-season, I don't think you do that. I think you have to wait it out a little bit, and hopefully this team maybe could gel next year. But it's definitely too early to tell. 2-4, yes, a bad start, but it's a start that you can obviously make up if you win 3 in a row now. And that's actually going to be where our Brick or Bucket is going to be this week. We have our segment every week called Brick or Bucket, where we give a strong statement to each other, whether we think will be a brick or a bucket. Brick means it's far off, or a bucket means, yeah, we agree. First off, Oliver, do you think the Knicks go 0-3 this week? They lose to Brooklyn at Madison Square Garden and then lose both games on their back-to-back against Boston and Toronto.
I think I'm going to take a more conservative approach here. I'm just going to be kind of realistic. I think Knicks win this game tonight with Brooklyn, and then I don't see them losing. I don't see them winning against Boston and Toronto. It's away in a back-to-back. I think it's going to be very, very tough for them to come out with wins on these.
I would have to agree with you. I think they do beat Brooklyn. It's on ESPN tonight. A big game for the Knicks. They're going back to Madison Square Garden. They're better on paper than Brooklyn. If they could steal one of the two back-to-back, if they could beat Boston or Toronto, that would be huge for the Knicks. Because it would be tough to go 1-3 last week, and then they have to go 1-2 this week. That would be bad. They almost need to win one of those two games.
Yeah, and that leads me into my question for you for Brick or Bucket. Do the Knicks have any shot at going into Boston and Toronto in consecutive nights and winning these games?
I'm going to say bucket, actually. I do think that the Knicks actually pull it off. I think that the Chicago game was a bright spot for the Knicks. I'm hoping that